I want to thank all of you for being here today, particularly our veterans, because you do so much for us and for our country. I think the first thing that we need to remember right now is the direction that our country's going. You know, when you ask people about our country, 70% say that our country's headed in the wrong direction. And why do you think that is? And I find it so interesting as I talk to people and as I watch this campaign unfold, and I hear Senator Merkley running around talking about how he is the champion of the middle class, how he's the big friend of the middle class. Well, look what's happened. Look what's happened to the middle class. Look what's happened to our income for the middle class. $3,000 less per year per family since Senator Merkley's been in office. $3,000. 8.9% drop in income for our middle class. And then look at the prices. Gas prices have doubled. We worry about whether or not we can afford groceries, whether or not we can pay our mortgage. And then how are we supposed to pay for health care? It's supposed to go up another 45% this year. Does that sound like that $2,500 cut a year we were all supposed to get in our insurance premiums? I was talking to a man at the Farm Bureau. He said, oh, yeah, he was absolutely right about that $2,500 decrease or $2,500 change in price. Exactly how much mine went up. It's insane. It's insane what's going on. And then look at our national security situation. Look what's happened in the world. We've got an indecisive president who just waffles all the time and can't protect us. Now I'm going to let our expert on that discuss this very soon. But I think the long and short of it is that when we withdraw as a world leader, when there's a vacuum, certainly somebody much less benevolent than us is going to fill that vacuum. But I got to say, if Jeff Merkley is the friend of the middle class, with friends like that, who needs enemies? As far as our vets go, I just want to focus a little bit on our veterans. Back when I was a resident, I trained at the VA, and the veterans are very, very special people. I almost felt like they were taking more care of me than I was taking care of them. I remember coming in late at night at the VA in Los Angeles where I was a resident, and the veterans were always worried about me. They'd say, Doc, you know, it's late at night. You shouldn't be going out there. It's dangerous. You know, there are all these crazy people out here in LA at night. And so one of them, I came in the next morning, he gave me a canister of pepper spray to use and carry in my pocket because he was so concerned. And as I would meet these guys and talk to all of them, it was clear to me that, you know, there were a lot of them that had external signs of the battle, you know, amputations or scars. And there were a lot that had that internal struggle that continues to go on. I've met with our veterans quite a bit. I've done several roundtables as we talk about this, and they talk about the difficulty of coming back and reintegrating into society, getting a good job. They talk about their families, the stress on the families, and trying to get counseling and help for not just the vet, but for their children and for their spouses, and how difficult that can be. But one thing that's very striking to me about our veterans is that there's never a bitterness or a resentment or an anger. It's an honor. It's a feeling of pride that they were able to stand for our country and fight for our country, and there's no greater love than what we see from our veterans. that actually put their life on the line for our country, for their children, and for people they don't even know.
That's right.
And who they will never meet, because they're doing what's right. You know, I had a little patient that I took care of years ago, and had a brain tumor, and came to me. I took the brain tumor out, and he did really well. Came back afterwards, gave me a thank you note, and on that note it said, if we're not here to make life better for one another, then what's the point?
Amen.
And what better example? You know, as this campaign has gone on and on, people always ask me, why would you leave a practice that you trained until you're 35 years old to do, and everybody loves you, to jump in this snake pit of politics, this totally fact-free zone. And I think about it, and you know, and then I've got a Kevlar vest on now. I think I need to borrow from some of you guys. But people ask me, they say, is it worth it? Has it been worth it? And I think about what our men and women go through, you know, putting their life on the line, getting shot at with real bullets. And I think, come on, Monica, you can do this, because it's not about me. It's about our country. It's about our future. It's about America. They tell us we have to accept this new normal, that this is the way it's going to be. Are you kidding me? When I think of the moms, and the dads that raise those little babies, get them to walk, get them potty trained, get them to kindergarten, get them all through high school, get them to prom, then send them off to war and never see them again. The sacrifices that people have made for this country to give us what we have, I am not going to sit back and let things unravel. I can't do it. I could not sit and go to my operating room and complain every day to everybody around me and not get out and try. And just like so many of you that have gotten out there to fight, and all of you that are here today to welcome a true American hero, Senator McCain. And I hope that when people go and vote in a few weeks, that they remember the direction things are going, and if they can think about their security and their future. Do you feel more secure in your job? Do you feel more secure in your health care? Are you kidding me? We've got the government between the doctor and the patient now. Do you feel more secure in being able to pay your mortgage, being able to buy your groceries or your gas? And good Lord, do you feel more secure in this world? We can change this. We don't have to go in this direction. We don't have to accept this new normal. I'm so happy to have Senator McCain here, and what a different place we would have had if we had had him in the year in 2008.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for your great, brave service. I think this young man ought to get in shape, don't you think?
I think so, John.
I'd like to thank all of you for being here, and thank you for your support of this good and decent and fine person that I believe will contribute enormously in addressing several compelling issues that will face this country and the Congress especially when we have the majority in the United States Senate, and we have a person who understands one of, if maybe the one or two most important and compelling issues facing this nation, and that's health care. Is there anybody that doesn't believe that Obamacare has been an abject failure? Of course it has been. We know that it has been. It needs to be fixed. We need to provide affordable health care for all Americans, and we need someone who has had the hands-on experience to do that. My friends, we've got about 90 lawyers. By the way, do you know the difference in the Senate? Do you know the difference between a lawyer and a catfish? One is a scum-sucking bottom dweller, and the other is a fish. We have enough lawyers, and we have 3 physicians, one of whom is retiring, one of the finest men, Dr. Tom Coburn. And we need somebody who can tell us what it's like, how you address these issues. And I want to say something about the VA. My friends, the VA is broken, okay? It's broken. You know where it all started? In Phoenix, Arizona. There were 50 of our veterans who literally died, according to the allegations, because they were not given the care that they earned. Now, our veterans here, is there anybody we owe that to more than our veterans? We need somebody with a hands-on experience. We passed a law. I'm proud that we passed a law and that we fired the head of the VA. We've got a new person, the head of the VA. My friends, that's the beginning. This is a bureaucracy that has been broken for years. My office, we do more cases on veterans than any other by far, because our veterans are not receiving the care they need and deserve. This will be the instant expert. This will be the go-to person in the United States Senate when we are talking about all the things that need to be done to care for our veterans. And I believe in her. I believe that we need that kind of talent and expertise, because I don't know a greater responsibility that we have than to care for those who have served and sacrificed for our country. And I'm grateful you're here. I see a few Marines here today, and so I have to mention that when I graduated from the Naval Academy, that I tried to get in the Marine Corps, but my parents were married. And then I have a son who joins the Marine Corps at age 18. Comes home and says, "Dad, you know that the Marines are part of the Navy Department, the men's department." So, I thank our former Marines who are here as well. My friends, let's face it. Let's face reality here. It's too close to call as to which party will be in the majority in the United States Senate. It's just a fact. And the eyes of the country will be on Oregon and a few other states on election night. Because what happens here can affect the future, certainly of this country for the next 2 years, of a failed presidency. And we need to have both houses of Congress if we are going to effectively break the excesses and the disregard, in the view of many of us, of the Constitution of the United States by the President of the United States, who said he is going to he said it himself. He said, "I've got a phone and I've got a pen." Basically saying that he was going to ignore Congress. He can't if we have both houses of Congress. A lot of my constituents come to me and say, "Senator McCain, why don't you do more? Why don't you do more? Why don't you stop this?" As you know, we have a significant problem in our southern border of thousands of children showing up on our southern border. Why don't you do more? I guarantee if we have both houses rather than one, we will do a great deal. And one of the first items we're going to take up is to fix Obamacare. And there is a person here who will lead in that because she has the talent and expertise and background. And so I'm here because from the day I met Monica, I've been very impressed with her. But I'm also here for a selfish reason. I'll be very honest with you. I want to see us gain the majority. But once we gain the majority, I want someone there who can guide us. I guarantee you, I do not have the knowledge and background and experience as Monica does. But I have a lot, but I will, and all of us in Congress will be guided by her in many of the aspects of how we're going to fix the VA and how we're going to repair and replace Obamacare, which will be among our top agenda items. So I hope that and by the way, in case you missed it, you see the approval rating of Congress is at now 12%. You see that? You know, we're down to well, we're down to paid staff and blood relatives. My mother is 102 years old. I'm not making that up. I received a phone call from her the other day. We're now down to paid staff. So anyway. Landed last night here at the airport. A guy ran up to me and said, he said, anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain? I said, yeah. He said, doesn't it sometimes make you mad as hell? So what will Monica bring to the United States Senate? Experience, knowledge, commitment, a lifetime of service, including to our veterans. All right? And I'm not here to bash her opponent, but I can tell you, I cannot tell you of a single thing a contribution that her opponent has made to the United States Senate or this country in the last 6 years. Now, if that's what you want, fine. But I guess there was an Indian lease or something like that. That's really good. Every 6 years you can expect an Indian lease. I'm not in the business of bashing her opponent, but I can tell you this. I have not seen a single thing that her opponent has done to contribute to the United States Senate except orchestrating what is called the nuclear option, which has basically deprived us Republicans of our right to advise and consent. And I resent it. I resent what he did enormously, and he was the leader in it. So I'm here for, as I mentioned, not just because of my admiration and respect for Monica. Let me just make a couple of comments, and then maybe both of us could respond to any questions or comments or insults that you might have for us. All right, what's happening in the world? What's happening in the world is dangerous. And what is happening in the world, there's more turmoil than I have ever seen at any time in my life since the end of the Cold War. At least during the Cold War, we had a very clear distinction between two superpowers, but there was also the great risk of a nuclear exchange. I was in the Cuban Missile Crisis, so I know, on board the USS Enterprise, so I know how dangerous the world was. But now we have this rise of radical Islam, which is posing a direct threat to the United States of America. Now you'll see, including Mr. Merkley, who has voted 99% of the time with Barack Obama, has supported this failed policy every step of the way, has not stood up for the men and women in the military, and will have a very different view than mine. But the fact is that we are now in danger of a direct threat to the United States of America. That's not John McCain's opinion only. That's the director of the CIA. That's the head of the FBI. That's the director of Homeland Security. That's every expert that I know. Now the Obama administration people are parsing that with a direct, credible, imminent threat. Well, do you have to wait for a direct, imminent, credible threat to believe? Look, the guy that's the head of ISIS is a guy named Baghdadi. He spent 4 years in our prison in Iraq in a place called Camp Bucca, and where at one time there was like 25,000 of these people. On the day he was released, Mr. Baghdadi turned to his American captors and said, "I'll see you in New York." Okay? That's what he said. And maybe you don't want to believe him. You think maybe he was joking? Of course not. And we have seen the rise of radical Islam, but we have seen it facilitated by a failed, feckless foreign policy by this President of the United States, who came to the presidency not with a plan, but just that he wasn't going to be Bush. That was his whole outlook on national security policy, and we are paying a very heavy price for it. My friends, there's some of our veterans here. There was a place called Fallujah And in 2007, there was the second Battle of Fallujah. We lost 96 Marines and soldiers killed and several hundred wounded. Do you know what flags fly over the city of Fallujah today? The flags of ISIS. The flags of ISIS. And it didn't have to happen. Lindsey Graham and I argued strenuously to leave a sustainable force behind of around 10,000 to 15,000 Americans and NATO. The President of the United States did not want it to happen, and he is lying when he tells you that he did. Okay? He's lying when he tells you what he did. I don't use that phrase ever, but I was there with Lindsey Graham and Joe Lieberman in Baghdad where they were going to agree to a sustainable force. So we didn't. So things collapsed. And of course, Maliki hollowed out his army. The rise of ISIS, which was really just a few years ago a very minor problem as compared, obviously, to what they are today. And now we see the largest, most powerful, richest terrorist organization in history. They control now an area the size of the state of Indiana. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. They were, because of the collapse in Mosul, they have tanks, they have artillery, they have Humvees, they have all this equipment of ours that as the Iraqi military in Mosul collapsed. And now this president has started some airstrikes. And you know what? In Syria, and both in Iraq and in Syria, we're going to have American boots on the ground. We're going to have not the 82nd Airborne, not large units, but we have to, a lot of our veterans here will tell you, you have to have people who can identify targets and guide those weapons in to taking them out. And it doesn't mean we're going to send in thousands and thousands, but it does mean that we're going to have more boots on the ground. And by the way, there already are boots on the ground. When the president says there's not going to be, there's already 1,700. And in Syria, we're going to have a no-fly zone because these Free Syrian Army people are being barrel-bombed by Bashar Assad in the most cruel and inhumane fashion. And again, these things don't happen by accident. 2 years ago, his national security team said, arm the Free Syrian Army. He overturned it. He turned them down. It was 3 years ago when he had the opportunity to leave a residual force behind. And he turned that down. He fought against it. In Afghanistan, my dear friends, in Afghanistan, if we don't leave a sustaining force behind, you're going to see the same movie that we saw in Iraq. I guarantee it. We just signed an agreement. You saw the headlines, a signed agreement with the Afghans. What is in the fine print is the president said it's going to be everybody out by the end of next 2016. We have to have a sustaining force, just as we did after Bosnia, just after we did after Korea, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be fighting or we take casualties. They are a force for stability. The men and women who are serving in the military, I don't have to tell you, are the best in the world. But I can tell you right now, there's many of them who talk to me, who tell me they question the quality of leadership they have. And there's every reason for them to do so. So I believe in America. I believe we're still the strongest nation in the world. And I believe that we can prevail. But we need the kind of effective national security policy that this president has been unable to provide. And if he can't provide it, then with a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate, we will be responsible for a great deal of it. Now, we got a month left before the election. Let's have a little dose of reality here. Monica's 6 points down, okay? 6 points down with a very large percentage still in the undecided category, okay? This is a winnable race.
Yes, it is.
But it's a winnable race, but it's an uphill battle, okay? So we're going to have to work, and we're going to have to work hard. And we're going to have to make sure that we spend some time every single day for the next 30 days getting out the vote. As most elections, it's a get out the vote is the campaign that wins. I'm honored to be here. Other of my colleagues in the Senate will be here as well in the next month on behalf of this fine and decent person. And by the way, gender doesn't matter in any race, but it would be nice to have a woman with medical experience who will lead the Republicans in the United States Senate as we reform and replace Obamacare. Wouldn't that be good for our party? I don't have any gender at all. So I thank you for coming this morning. Everybody here had something else to do, but you're here. And you're here on behalf of a good and decent person. Every election cycle, politicians stand in front of you and say, this is the most important election in history. This may not be the most important election in history, but I believe when you look at the world today and you view the feckless leadership of this president, we need to have a majority in the United States Senate. We need to have it because we got to repeal and replace Obamacare. We need to have it because we need to have genuine tax reform. We need it because we want the XL pipeline. We need it because we have to put the brakes on these out-of-control agencies like the EPA and others. We have to have it for the good of this country and our future, and you can make it happen. So thanks for having me this morning. It's great to be with you, and God bless.
That I have, because there's so many of them. And if we went around the room and asked what is the #1 thing our government can do for each one of us, you'd probably have many different answers. I personally think one of those questions, or those answers to that question, what can the government do for each of us, is to protect this country. And I'd like to know how you, Dr. Wehby, is going to protect the rest of us with the porous border that we have, with Ebola coming in, with the division that we have between the low. I'm 71 years old, and I don't think we've ever had more division in this country than we have right now, in all kinds of areas. Income, inequality, rights, many, many different issues. So what are you going to do to bring this country together and to protect us as individuals?
Well, do you want us to start with immigration or jobs or which issue that you raised?
Yeah.
I think we can tie it all back to one big issue, and I think that's the polarization that we have in Congress. Things are so polarized right now, we're not able to get anything done with regards to the work of the people and things that need to be pushed forward. We're so busy butting heads that we're not able to do what's right. And we've got people there that only care about the next election, that only care about their own career, rather than what's right for the people of Oregon and for the United States. For example, my opponent votes with his party. When he's feeling bipartisan, he'll vote with his party 95% of the time. When he's not feeling bipartisan, he votes with his party 98% of the time. Now, I don't think he remembers where he's from, because in Oregon, we're very, very independent-minded. We don't agree with anybody 95% of the time, much less Harry Reid. And he's also rated the most extreme senator in the Senate by National Journal, way out there. And when you're way out on one side or the other, one extreme or the other, you are never in the room when the problems are solved. And we deserve to have a senator who knows how to talk to people, who knows how to look at all sides of an issue, knows how to look at the facts and move things forward. Senator Merkley is all about Washington, D.C., big bureaucracy, big government over-regulation that dictates, mandates, regulates every single aspect of our lives. He has forgotten that this country was founded by people who wanted to get away from that.
Come on.
That is not who we are. He's Washington, D.C., he's for big government, big bureaucracy. I'm for the people of Oregon and for what's right for us, and I will always stand with the people of Oregon. Senator McCain, do you have any comments?
Repeal and replace Obamacare. Here's a leader in that effort. XL Pipeline, repeal sequestration, which is emasculating our military, as you know, tax reform, a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I have for years not agreed with that, but given the spending practices in Washington, I believe that a constitutional amendment to balance the budget is the only way we're really going to rein in this debt, which is now skyrocketed, and we have mortgaged our children and our grandchildren's futures. There's a $40,000 debt for every man, woman, and child in America today. So what Monica and I are going to do is write out a list of the top 7 things that we will work on. And I would argue that the first is probably the health care issue. I don't have to tell anybody in Oregon how convoluted this whole process has become. We want affordable health care for every single American. But the object of Obamacare was to, quote, bend the cost curve down. Remember that? Obama used to talk about that all the time. It has bent the cost curve up, and it's being paid for by healthy young Americans to subsidize the health care of older Americans. That's not fair to younger Americans. It's not fair for them to have to do that. So that's a few of the issues, and then of course on national security, we just need to. I can assure you from traveling around the world a lot that there's no longer the respect, or more importantly, the fear, in some cases, of the United States of America that there was under the greatest president of our time, Ronald Reagan, who won the Cold War.
That's right.
That's
right.
Senator, my name is Command Sergeant Major Schlang. I'm retired, obviously. And of all the concerns, of all the burning issues, from immigration to the debt, the single biggest thing that gleams in my OD heart is the drawdown of our military. How can we conceivably defend and protect our country, let alone the world police force, with the drawdown that we're experiencing and what's projected to 2016? You've been there, I've been there. Boots on the ground is not a foreign term to me. I know how that works. My concern is, in light of what's going on in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and now on our homeland, what are we doing?
First of all, thank you for your service. Everything I ever learned about leadership, I learned from Command Master Chief in the United States Army.
Lightweight, sir.
And thank you for your service and leadership.
And yours as well, sir.
Thank you. First thing we have to do is repeal sequestration. Sequestration was put into effect, which was cuts in both defense and domestic spending. On the way there, they exempted a large number of functions of government. Defense is 13% of the budget, and it's taken 50% of the cuts. Now, I don't have to tell you that we are now in a situation, which you will find astounding, many Americans will find astounding, where we are sending messages to Army captains and majors in Afghanistan that they are being involuntarily discharged from the United States Army. My friends, when you do that, the heart of leadership are our captains and our sergeant majors. Those are NCO leaders and our young officers. And we're now telling a bunch of them that they can't stay in the United States Army because of sequestration. So the first step, repeal sequestration. And that way we will at least stop. And by the way, it's not just Republicans that were, not just Democrats that were for sequestration, it was Republicans as well. It's a bipartisan disease.
Well, you're a patriot that just keeps on giving. I'm very proud that you're here. One of the needs, perhaps, for some improved medical resources in Congress is not just the fact that our guard was down with Ebola. I think we should be honest about that. Our guard is down. That's not my question. But Senator, when you landed this morning,
Last night, yes.
Last night, did you know that you landed at probably the most radioactive river in the world, William River, because of the nuclear waste seeping underground? And so people talk about carbon
If you want you to
footprint.
speak up a little, they can't.
People talk about carbon footprint, and I just wanted to suggest that I'm proud of the fact that you realize the need for more of a medical understanding of our real risks, which is not carbon footprint, but the Columbia River, radioactive releases, Ebola, and improper. Thank you for emphasizing that need. I think there is a gap in the bill.
When you mention Ebola, say a few words about Ebola.
Well, I just think that it's a very dangerous issue, and I think that we can't underestimate the risk. That we've got to be very careful. It's a disease that spreads very rapidly, and we have to contain it. We have to keep it under control, and we can't be lighthearted about it. This is a very serious issue. You see how quickly it's spreading, so we have to be very careful. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sure. Sure.
I have two issues, both for veterans. One is with the VA, and it's not ever been addressed, and that is the top tier of medications is unavailable to the VA, which forced me to leave the VA and seek civilian medical attention just to stay alive. And that's been a long time ago.
Could I just respond to that real quick? It's unacceptable, and the new head of the VA, who, as you know, is a former Army officer that rose to be CEO at Procter & Gamble, has both military and corporate leadership experience, has assured me that he is going to address that issue. So far, frankly, I'm not overjoyed with the pace of things. In fact, he should have fired some people a long time ago, but anyway, go ahead.
And the second issue is 5% of disabled veterans pay themselves a disability pension, while the other 95% have a pension coming from the taxes of the people. I have had 4 years of frustration trying to get legislation out of the Armed Services Committees of the House and the Senate that would do that. In the current session, S-234 would fix that. It's going to die when this session of Congress ends. This needs to be addressed at the beginning of the next session of Congress. That is a firm conviction.
Well, I'll be glad to address it in the Senate Armed Services Committee if we're in the majority. That's one of the real important aspects of majority or minority status is that you set the agenda, and so I'll be glad to discuss that. But again, on the issue of prescription drugs, I think Monica would be an incredible spokesperson for people who need that.
Well, this is all about cost containment. You know, that's what's happening. That's why those drugs were not available for you, is because it's about cost containment. And if you want to see the direction of things, if you want to see what happens when the government takes over your health care, look at what happened at the VA. Look at what's happened. You have long wait times. You can't get in to see a doctor. We've had this big expansion of Medicaid in Oregon, but we see even in our own paper, the Oregonian, you see articles running about how we've got all these people now on Medicaid, but they can't get in to see a doctor. Just because you have an insurance card doesn't mean that you have access to your doctor. So if you want to see the future of Obamacare, look at the VA. That's what happens when the government gets in between you and your doctor.
You can keep your doctor.
But you can keep your doctor if you change your senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for 2 few more questions for Dr. Wehby and Senator McCain.
But these guys have had their hands in the longest.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, we do not need another rubber stamp out there, and I'm sure glad that the one that isn't going to be has the knowledge and expertise that you have. The other thing, though, is you guys are talking about, and I got to say this, we have one of the best VA hospitals in the country. I've been to a few of them, and the one here in Oregon is really excellent. But they're hampered like everybody else.
Right.
The problem right here is that there are two people handling the paperwork that comes into the VA for the whole region. I mean, it's not just Oregon. Oregon, Washington, this whole region. I've been told, I'm just trying to get the money for my daughter that has been due to me over 2 years, and they said, well, we only have two people handling all this stuff, and I'm glad now that they told me why is that it's taken so long. It's because they're taking care of the veterans' medical problems. Two people for all of the vets in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Come on. Thank you so much.
Right. It's just inefficiency and overregulation. I mean, I tell you what, in my office as a surgeon, my staff spend more time on paperwork than they do taking care of patients. And that's what's happening with all of this big government overreach and overregulation. It's paralyzing our small businesses. It's making it difficult for our economy to grow. It's like a noose around the neck of our businesses by this government, tighter and tighter, and it's a way to control businesses. And we've got to get rid of that and let our businesses grow and let our economy grow. This overregulation, this government overreach is what's paralyzing our economy. We've got the worst post-war recovery in history.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's because of these policies. Are we going to sit and let this keep going on? We have got to turn this around. We've got to wake people up. They've got to get out there and turn things around this election. We cannot keep going this way we're going. I'm not going to be the first generation that can't say my kids are going to be better off or not going to be better off than I was. I'm not going to sit back and let that happen. I'm not. And I know none of you are either. So we have got to get people out.
I'll mention one other thing. This Congress is the least productive Congress in history. Now, there's a reason for that. And that reason is because of the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, that Senator Merkley is in lockstep with, who prevented us from even proposing any amendments. Now, if that's the way that the people of Oregon want the United States Senate to function, then keep the majority of the United States Senate in Harry Reid's hands. If you want us to get things done, and we have an agenda and we promise to move, then obviously we need to have a majority, and we need to have this wonderful, decent person who has served our veterans. There is not a veteran in Oregon that shouldn't be voting for this person who has proven her service to them. I thank you all for being here this morning.